Go.
I think it started.
So, are we now live? So, good morning, everyone. Good morning to the audience. Good morning to the colleagues from panel. I think we have started. We're online. So, since we are online, it's quite difficult to understand. The audience already can hear us. So, today's panel is about clean space, space debris. So, the problem that exists today more and more with the development of space and the launch of satellite constellations. So there are many approaches to deal with this issue. And today we have a very good, very interesting panel to address this issue. So we have Luc Piguet from ClearSpace, Bruno Carvalho from The Orbit, Nuno Silva from Deimos, and Mauro Gameiro from Critical Software. So I take this chance to thank them to be here, contribute to this topic, and of course to the organization to organize this important discussion. So I'll start with a brief round of introductions from the guests. So very brief, yourselves and your company. Luc, you can start.
Yes, my name is Luc Piguet. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ClearSpace. ClearSpace is a spin-off from the EPFL in Lausanne that works on debris removal. We founded the company in 2018 and have been selected by ESA to lead the first mission to deorbit debris from space by 2025. We started working with a very complete industrial team a little earlier this year, and we'll be moving on this mission on the coming 5 years.
Okay, thank you, Luc, very much. Now I'll pass the word to Bruno.
Hi, hello, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Bruno Carvalho. I'm managing the Orbit office in Lisbon. The Orbit is a company that is focused on in-orbit logistics from an end-to-end perspective. So we will put things in space and we'll bring them down and deorbiting them safely. And the company was set up back in 2011 in Italy, and it's been operating in Portugal since 2014. The aim is to have and enable a sustainable use of space. So we do need space, but we need to do it sustainably, and that's the goal.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruno. Nuno from Deimos, please.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity. So, work for Deimos, as you said. Deimos has been active in debris topics for some time. So in addition to now being joined with ClearSpace and Critical Software in the ClearSpace project or ADRIS program from ESA, where we are in charge of the GNC subsystem. Deimos also has telescopes on ground in Spain, now building them in Portugal. So we've been quite active in the area of debris monitoring and detection and now removal. So I'll be pleased to be speaking to you about that topic today.
Thank you very much, Nuno. And finally, Mauro, please.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. So my name is Mauro Gameiro from Critical Software. Critical was founded in '98. I'm the principal engineer for the space and big science markets of Critical Software. It's the first project where Critical is involved in space debris removal. We already started working with ClearSpace and Deimos on this. Critical will be the prime contractor for the flight software, and we are looking forward to work in this very important mission.
Okay. Thank you very much, you all, Mauro. Now, I would divide now this panel in two rounds. So the first round is where I ask you to give more details about how you are contributing through your companies to this issue of cleaning space, either actively or passively. And the second round, I'll ask you to talk a little bit more about the future. And if we have time in the end, we have some final comments. So to talk about your activities, I would start with our honored guest from Switzerland, Luc. Please, can you explain a bit more agios and activities you are pursuing, teaming up with Critical and Deimos?
Sure. To give you a little background, the team behind ClearSpace has been working on the space debris issue since about 2010. Well, what happened in 2010 is just after the launch of CubeSat that we launched in 2009, straight into the field of debris of the Cosmos-Iridium collision, we received a lot of conjunction notification from the American Air Force indicating that the CubeSat could actually collide with debris. That really triggered the work for us on the question of space debris in 2010. We started by getting clever on the question, and then after a couple of years of studies on the subject, we decided that what has to be done is a mission. So we decided to launch a mission called Clean Space 1 at the time, which had as objective to go pick up the Swiss Cube. The big problem with this was essentially funding, right? Nobody would pay for a mission to deorbit the debris. Everybody would say, yeah, it's really necessary. This has to be done, but who's going to pay for it? And we have been working like this within the academic environment for years, until 2017, where we saw that the OneWeb constellation was funded, and we could see how the space environment is going to transform in the coming years. We realized that space tomorrow is not going to be space as we did it so far, and that in this new environment it was necessary to bring in new services, very similar to what the orbit as well is doing. And so we decided that doing this in the academic environment was too slow, so we created a company to lead that kind of exercise. We started talking with a lot of operators at the time. We went to see OneWeb, we went to see SpaceX, SCS, many different operators, mostly to talk with them and understand their needs and their perception about the future, and then participated to this ADRIOS tendering process. So the goal of the mission that we proposed was to make the first demonstration of the complete value chain of how you pick up a debris in space and remove it. And we selected an object which substantially de-risks this mission. So we reduced substantially the risk by selecting an object which has the right size for that kind of mission. The best part is a payload adapter of a Vega launcher, and then proposed a very streamlined mission toward a future commercial service. And that was really the motivation we had. The other dimension is that we decided that the best way to get to flight readiness by 2025 was to partner, was to find experienced partner companies with whom we could actually build that together. We were a startup, a relatively small startup at the time, but the best way to move forward was to build up an industrial team where we really have a co-engineering approach. And so that's what we did. We submitted to ESA as a team, and then built up our industrial team over the past few months. We consolidated it at the beginning of this year, including Deimos and Critical Software in Portugal, with whom we do really important development when it comes to GNC and to flight software, and started working together. For us, it was absolutely critical to build a team with whom we have a good dynamic and where we can really do co-engineering, and that's what's going on right now.
Okay. Yes, we could be spending a lot of time talking about this very interesting mission, which has a lot of details that would need to be explained to the wider audience. But it's a very important, ESA-supported mission, commercially driven, where Portugal in this past ministry also invested a lot, which allows now to have also good partners contributing to this interesting potential future market. I'll now pass the word to Bruno for the orbit, because the orbit is also very active in this area. So can you explain a bit more the most relevant activities?
Yes, sure. The orbit is taking. I mean, we all in this for the same purpose, as Luc was saying, but the orbit is taking a slightly different approach. And when it was set up in 2011, it came on the back of an idea that our founders had about a deorbiting device. And this is something that has to do with the regulatory environment, right? So there's in order for us, the way we see this, in order for us to clear space and to make sure that we can use particularly the relevant orbits in the near future, we have to incorporate mechanisms to actually proactively preempt that garbage to stay up there, right? So the orbit idea was to attach a device, a small device that will bring the satellites down, and these satellites could be satellites or fairings or third stages, whatever, bring them down as soon as their mission is over. The issue with that business model is that because the regulations are not enforceable at the moment, and the 25-year guidelines are still in place, it's very hard for the companies to justify that cost, that extra cost you have to push an additional device on it. So the thought about the orbit then took a slightly different approach. We have not thrown that idea away, so we're still working on the orbiting device, and we actually have it on our catalogs, which you can push us. But we took a different approach. So what if we then help the actual transportation of the satellites to orbit, and then eventually bring them down when they are, out of their at the end of their mission, at the end of their lives. So we are now. And this is already this is launched. The first mission is launched in September. We have our In Orbit Now services, where we will take you to orbit. We'll disperse your constellation, even if you don't have any propellant or any propulsion system. We now demonstrated that as a commercial service. So we're coming now to the end of the first 12 Planet Doves being deployed. The last one will be on Monday, and this allows our customer to get into the right and correct orbital position before earlier than originally planned by a simple piggyback launch, and we'll publish soon enough data on the disbursement of the Planet Doves, because we actually have data to compare it with, as we had other Doves flying on the same launch that Vega launched last September, and with that they can get not only to revenue before they plan, because the constellation is going to be in place before the original plan, but also put them in an orbit that will potentially bring them down quicker, because you can shorten the lifetime of those satellites. I mean, the next step is for that same device, that Ion satellite, the Ion platform, to then fetch those same satellites and then bring them down. This is something we're not going to be able to do it in September. We have another mission for December and the follow-up mission in November. We're still in the process of developing that kind of capability, that kind of technology, but that's the aim. So it's to provide an in-orbit service from a logistics perspective, and eventually in-orbit service to potentially repair and sort out other satellites that we can extend their lives. But we still think that the proactive approach for the future, when you're talking about launching, I mean, if you think about, we launched about 8,000 satellites since 1957 till now, and we now foresee to launch about 35,000 to 40,000 over the next decade, then it brings things into perspective. So we do need to be proactive in trying to bring things down. Another vector that we are dealing with is also to use the platform that we have in orbit to generate data for the SST effort. So actually, we have some star trackers, actually 8 star trackers at each corner of the platform that we have, and we're going to use those imageries to catalog space debris. So basically, in the field of view of the star tracker, whatever it's not a star, that's not cataloged, that means it's a piece of debris, and we can correlate that with existing databases and actually feed into the SST. That complements the work that people like Deimos are doing with their telescopes and the radars. I mean, all that information is relevant. It's not enough. And even commercial entities that like Deimos are feeding those databases, it's still not enough. And the other constraint that these databases have, particularly the ground-based observations, is they all focus in LEO, and we're also crowding MEOs and other areas of space. So we're looking into techniques to feed into that, and we expect to have some results over the next 6 months, because we're already using the satellite we have in orbit to test those algorithms and test those theories, and prove some that we can add to that body of information.
Okay. Thank you, Bruno. It's very exciting to see that the development of the space sector nowadays is allowing for many business opportunities and a lot of many services to be deployed, and that now the best companies are trying to pursue that, and best entrepreneurs. Also in Europe, there was this micro launcher workshop early in Portugal Summit where some of you have been, which is also a way to contribute to populate space with debris, which also raises the challenges we are discussing. But I will now give the floor to Nuno from Deimos, which is also very active in exploiting these opportunities, also working with ClearSpace. Nuno, please.
Indeed. So just starting by the end, if you don't mind, since you mentioned it. Indeed, so on Wednesday we said, we're trying to make the access to space very democratic, so more people can launch and the economy can benefit from it. That is true, but as Bruno said, we need to do it in a responsible manner, more and more in the future. As I said, the regulations are kind of not really in place. They exist, but not enforceable. So that's one area we intend to work. So making access to space democratic, and Demos is very committed to it, but responsibly. So coming back to your question, but I just think it was important to mention that. So Demos, in a way, I won't say it's unique, but we feel in a way a bit unique because we look at space debris from two different areas. So we actually started on the flight segment a long time ago, almost 20 years ago, building the technology that we now intend to use in ClearSpace. So that was a long path, more and more concrete as we came along, supported by obviously the delegation throughout these years in ESA. But I won't say in parallel, so at a later date, we also, starting in Spain there, to do what we're going to do with ClearSpace, to go and grab a piece of debris and put it down, we need to rendezvous and capture the thing. So to do that, we need to know where it is. I know it sounds a bit silly, but it's quite important to know. You need to know where the thing is you want to grab, how it's moving, etc. Otherwise, it's the problem that is already quite hard becomes even harder, if not impossible. So as Bruno was saying, all the data we can get about these objects is important. So we started with telescopes in Spain, I think in 2015. We now have 4 in Spain operating, indeed selling that data to the agencies and the institutions that track data to issue those alarms of collision so that we can avoid collisions, etc. Obviously between dead bodies, there's little we can do, but at least we know what can happen. And they also help us characterize all these objects we want to grab later on. On that side of things, Portugal is now interested in that as well, in kind of a joint European effort. So we are going to install 2 telescopes in Madeira and 2 telescopes in the Azores. There's actually already a picture from the Azores from a week or 2 ago from space with the constellation. I won't say the name because I'm sure I would get it wrong, but it's a pretty picture. It's not the purpose of the telescope, but it's like for trying it out. So that's already in place and working. There will be a second one. I said another 2 in Madeira. All of this has been a bit delayed because of COVID, but it's going ahead. On the space side of things, so after the more Gen Z related developments, and let me say more of a personal level than Demos, I worked for 8 years on ATV, so till launch, and it's also good to see that from an European perspective, we made a great path together to develop the technology we can now do. I mean, a mission like ClearSpace wouldn't be possible without all the 10 years or 20 years now of technological development Europe has done to be able to do a European mission on this. So we're now going to build on all of it that has been done in Demos, in Europe, so with all these partners. So I think there'll be time, hopefully, to speak of the future, but the present for now is this. We're now coming to the fruition of different efforts that we've done. Sometimes not me, but people with the better vision than myself have invested in these technologies, and people with a great vision as well are now trying to see this as both a useful service for, let's call it humanity, but also as a commercial service. So the idea, discussing with ClearSpace and fully on board with that this becomes a commercial service. So that's a bit of a different ESA mission. So the present is that, how to make, and I'm sorry, look, I know this is much more of your topic than mine, but how to make indeed, in all areas, a service that is affordable. Otherwise, you're killing it itself at the beginning. If you make this extremely expensive, it won't happen. So that must come from straight away from the beginning. So that's the current challenge.
Okay, Nuno, thank you very much. Very exciting to see all the areas that Deimos is working to tackle the space debris. And finally, I'll give the word to Mauro to also to explain a critical role in this area and also the important role they have won working with ClearSpace.
So for critical, of course, it's the first time that we participate on a project for cleaning the sky, right? But of course, in our company, we have projects in other markets that are also kind of green. So it's really exciting to have the chance to do it also for the space part. In terms of challenges, there will be a lot of them for us because it will be the first time a Portuguese software company will be responsible to lead the flight system of a mission. And this is a really important mission because, as everyone said, this is a real problem now, and it will become even worse with the amount of satellites that are being launched and planned to be launched, and soon this will be really difficult for us, for humanity, right? There will be a lot of challenges, technological. So we are already co-engineering with ClearSpace. We are going to use new technologies on the flight system, on the flight software. Of course, this is being discussed and decided, but for sure we will use new technologies, and it will be very, very good for us to not only provide the software, but we will also be providing the system validation facility for the software part. Which will be another new thing for us. We never use our system validation facility in space projects, although we have used it in all other markets that Critical works on. So we are very excited to be able to provide two systems on the space market.
Okay, thank you, Mario. We also hope that Critical takes well these challenges and can benefit from the growth of this area in the future. I think this first round was very good to understand better this complex world of what is going on to address clean space. Of course, there are many other activities and entities. We could be here for a lot of time discussing those, but I'll now start to the second round where I ask you to talk a little bit more about the future. How do you see the business models, this area evolving? Of course, you all believe this will be a real issue. So for instance, Portugal Space is trying to promote a satellite constellation. So this will add to the problem, even if this is important also for the country to get new business models and new concepts. So I would ask you for a roundabout challenges or issues that you see with cleaning space in this area, and how Portugal can benefit from that. So I would start now with Bruno from the Orbit to change a bit the order.
Hi, I think it's a long question. You can have a long answer to this one, but I think the greatest challenge is still the regulatory environment. Okay, it's still the international coordination about those guidelines I mentioned, and I know that several entities are looking into this problem, from FAA to the European Union to ESA to countries. Several institutions are looking into this. Even the UN, who knows, is looking into that problem, and it does require national cooperation and international agreements to be able to enforce these guidelines and for them to become, I'd say, the rule. It's like an airplane. You can't fly an airplane if you don't have a certificate, and if the certificate is not valid, then you can't fly your passengers, and so on and so forth. Like your cars, you need to have a license plate, and you need to have a VIN number, and you need for that car to be associated with a certificate to be able to be on the road. And I think that the same needs to happen at some point with space. I mean, you have, and it's not just about space traffic control that will have to potentially happen as well, but it's also the making sure that family of satellites, that type of bus, that type of mission, you can enforce the guidelines and bring the satellite down, and hopefully those guidelines will be less than 25 years after the end of life. And these for us are the things that will trigger the marketplace to become commercial. Otherwise, all of us will still be dependent for these kind of missions from institutional markets. The orbit is taking a slightly different approach, as I said, from cleared space. So we're trying to build a market in a slightly different way. So being again proactive in terms of putting things up and then bringing them down eventually. But for the majority of the companies involved in this field, and there are others, as Luis was mentioning, including in Europe. These will only be triggered commercially, break that ceiling and be viable business if the rules are enforceable. Otherwise, institutions will have to pay for it, and the governments will have to pay for it. And so either you levy something that like a tax, like a garbage tax, like you pay it at home to have your garbage being disposed. That's not a possibility, and unless that is levied, I don't know, from the licensing scheme of the satellites or from whatever, that is going to be impossible to become a commercial viable field. However, we do believe that the international institutions are working towards that, and including in Portugal, there's several initiatives around that, and the regulatory environment that was set up in Portugal last year accounts for that. And now we need to see how that is going to pan out in terms of the liabilities and the insurances that are going to be awarded and everything that comes with it. So I think the jurists and lawyers are going to have still a long work to do in terms of probably earn more money than us in the near future. But that's part of the path, and that's part of the way forward, I think.
Okay, yeah. So it's not just work for engineers, but also for lawyers. This regulatory.
Correct. Particularly international jurisdictions, yeah, I do believe so.
Yeah, so there is a lot of work also for lawyers, and we had the panel during this summit on that. Nuno, so I now give the floor to Nuno on your perspective about the future challenges or opportunities on this area. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to be brief as well. So, I mean, I'll put it at two levels. I mean, the global one, I mean, I like to look into this a bit like recycling, so the 3 R's, reduce, recycle, reuse. So we need to reduce, was what Bruno was saying, but there's 2 ways of reducing. Reduce whatever we put new in there, which is the regulations, and it's important indeed that it's some harmonization, otherwise states will compete towards the bottom, and that's not what we want. And then for the ones that are there, we need to bring them down, and that's the technology we're talking about here. And then in-orbit servicing comes into play as well, which is in a way reuse whatever we have there. I mean, I'm trying to force a bit the argument, I know, but that's the idea anyway. So the satellite is the end of life, and if you can just give it some more propellant for it to continue, that's also a way of going towards a better environment, in this case in space. So globally, I see these challenges, and I think we need indeed to act on the 3 R's, as we do as people at home. And then looking at demos more in particular, I mean, what we see here is the possibility of providing end-to-end services at our level. So because we're already active in the characterization and detection of debris, so that's a field we already have, but we now want to connect it to the flight segment. So we said in the press, we're now doing the GNC, so the pilot, the autopilot of the vessel. That is one of the technologies. It's quite critical. So for us, the next step would be, I mean, to obviously try to use this in orbit servicing. That's the more, let's say, straightforward reuse, but also to expand. I mean, GNC is so close to system that the next step for us would be system, not necessarily in clean space, still in cooperation as far as possible with clear space. But for us, it's trying to connect all of this together as a single service, as I said. So we detect, We can remove it, or we can. I mean, there's another option, which is we don't deorbit, but you put it in an orbit that leaves Earth. Is the end-to-end. So trying to develop more service, and fundamentally, honestly, because we're more of a technology company, to reuse our technology in other sectors. So in other applications, as I said, in orbit servicing. That would be the idea.
Okay, very clear. So very clear idea how this market could evolve and how Deimos and others can position themselves. I'd now also ask Mauro for his perspective and Critical's perspective on this item, even if Critical is looking more broadly in different sectors and how to benefit from the synergies.
Yeah, well, our idea in terms of future on this field would be to do a great job on the Clear Space mission that we are working on, and then to keep collaborating with the Clear Space, with the Deimos, who knows, with the orbit, to continue working on this subject, because it's really important. As everyone mentioned, this needs to be to have the same laws or the same rules as other means of transportation, like airplanes and cars that Bruno was mentioning. So we want to continue collaborating with companies, maybe other companies that are working on the same field, if will contact us to provide also our engineering services to them. And of course, we will be reusing the knowledge and the experience that we will acquire in this mission and apply it as we do on the other markets that we have at Critical. And that's our way of working, is to give the possibility of our engineers and the Critical people to evolve professionally and personally. And then this is like a feedback. You learn, and then you teach, and you get energy, and you provide energy to others to continue our engineering work.
Okay, thank you, Mario. Critical has been very consistent in space and other sectors, so I'm sure you'll be continuing to do this job. I'll now for final words on this round, and so I'll give the floor to Luke to tell us a little bit about the future, and why not further developing this sector from Portugal, Luke? This is just a provocation, and we already have good partners to do that. Okay.
Yeah, we started very well in Portugal, and we were very impressed by the team of in industries and support by PT Space as well in this exercise. And we are very confident about the future when it comes to collaborating in Portugal. So it's a great place. It's a great place. Now, there's two dimensions for the future. The first one is obviously the price, and I think that's also what Bruno was mentioning. You have to bring that kind of service to the right price tag, and that's absolutely critical. There's no market above a certain price. It has to be affordable to remove debris from orbit. So that's one of our main focus, finding the right solution in terms of price. I think also what the orbit does is very interesting, looking at it as a multiplicity of services, a new way of operating in space. And I think that's what we have to invent as European industry, is a new way to operate tomorrow in space. You cannot apply the same recipes and same rules you used to apply for the last decades in an environment as it's evolving right now. We have to rethink the model, rethink how we deliver stuff in orbit, how we move stuff in orbit, what we move where and why, how we use the timing, the weight timing on all the platform, how we optimize the monetization around space services. And that's definitely what I can see the orbit does in a very intelligent way. We believe that this definitely is a way forward in the way we have to work on it. Another dimension to bring the cost down is collaboration. I think we really approach this work we do here in a it's almost in some part it's like competition. You might collaborate with people with whom you might compete in some other fields, it was very interesting to see on the tender process that we had some members in our industrial team that were actually competing with us on other proposals. So it's quite an unusual system when you look at it from other industries. Now, when it comes to legislation, there's changes that are necessary. What we see is that the situation today with the space treaties that are in place is that the launching states are responsible. They're actually liable for something that is in orbit. The big problem is how you demonstrate fault, because you have to demonstrate fault. If I have a constellation, somebody collides with one of my satellites, I will have to go demonstrate fault. And if I bring the launching state to court or the operator to court, the operator will show up with a huge stack of paper demonstrating how responsible he was through the complete operation and telling everybody I did everything. I was applying the best practices all through my operation. I never committed any fault. One of my satellites failed, would have happened to anybody. It's an act of God. I operated without making any fault. And so the problem today is that there's a gridlock in this legislation system. And our take is that the gridlock is due to the fact that there's no tow truck, right? If on the motorway, to give a comparison, you have a car that fails in the middle of the motorway. You can't repair it on the motorway. You don't leave it there, walk away and buy another car. You call the tow truck. And if you leave it there, you're responsible. And you're responsible because you could actually pay for a tow truck. So the question is, how much should be the price of a tow truck for us? And that's really one of the questions we have. And is it a tow truck? Is it a delivery van? And this is the way when you approach the space industry where you think, hey, how should we operate tomorrow? And that's really the fundamental question. What we see in this Clear Space One mission in the ADRIOS program is that the motivation behind this program is to break this gridlock between legislation and technology, right? Nobody develops the technology because nobody wants to fund it because there's no legislation. But nobody can legislate because there's no example on how you're going to solve the problem. And what's really interesting with this mission and where we see that this mission that ESA put in place is forward thinking, is that the most impactful part of this mission is a mission that will help break this gridlock. It will allow to finance technologies from Europe and be leaders when it comes to that kind of services. And we are very enthusiastic about that. And we're very enthusiastic about the support all the different member states to the mission, the contributing states, including Portugal, brought to this mission, because this is a very big bet that has been done here. And it's a bet that we believe will transform the future of the industry, not just for us, but also for other companies like the Orbits and other companies that work on similar problems as we do. And we are convinced that the future of the space industry doesn't need just one service provider doing this. It needs more. It needs more than one. Because when we look at the past of where we are today, every single year, 74 over the last 20 years, every single year, 24 new derelict objects are added to space. And just removing one takes us 5 years today, right? So this is a huge problem, and it's a growing problem. So we can think, okay, let's only think of the future. When we looked at the problem, we thought we cannot ignore the past as well. We have to build a new future, and we have to address the past. Today, we have about 2,000 rocket bodies that are in orbit. Some of them are critically dangerous because they cannot avoid collision. Some of them are 9 tons. Just 2 of those objects collide, and the number of space debris duplicates. And this has a huge impact for the complete space industry. And we have about 3,000 failed satellites for about 2,000 live ones. This curve is going to, as we see SpaceX launching twice 60 satellites per month, this curve is going to inverse. But when we look at the future of space, we really have to rethink the way we operate, and that's really what drives us. And we think that this is a market. It's a market that has to be built up. There's going to be change in legislation. We expect the first changes to happen on the licensing models, right? Because if member states are liable if launching states are liable for the satellites that are placed in orbit, then launching states should also have more expectations toward the operators, saying, hey, you put stuff in orbit, you bring it down, right? And I think that this is probably the first change that's going to happen. What's interesting from our perspective is that this change will not require 15 years of international negotiation. A change like this takes about a year for a space agency, because you do your new proposition of regulation change, and then you're going to have consultation with the industry, and you go to a decision saying, okay, how much of a risk is the taxpayer ready to take in this exercise? How much of a risk can we put on the taxpayer? How much of a risk should be in the industry? And what happens if a satellite operator goes bankrupt or goes Chapter 11? So we look at the future and we know new solutions are needed. We also know that what space offers in terms of value for humanity is massive. We are already completely dependent on space infrastructure today, and we're going to be more so tomorrow. What space offers for humanity is a radical disruption in the way we live, the way we operate. And I think that's what Elon Musk sees when he does the Starlink constellation. That's what all those entrepreneurs see today. And we strongly believe that this is the future. We think it's much more logical to transport internet over space than in fiber optics everywhere around the world. And it's also more sustainable if you can maintain the space environment. And that's what makes us believe that there's a clear market for the future. And what we try to do with the ClearSpace One mission, and I think what ESA tries to do and the ESA member state try to do, is to build up a European leadership around that.
Okay, look, thank you very much. That was very clear and convincing. If anyone still was having any doubts about the importance of this topic, I guess you made it quite clear, and it's clear that in your head everything is very well structured. You understand very well the problem, and also the colleagues that you have from Portugal also, as well as the Orbit, have done a great job here. We don't have more time, so we're over our time. So, but I guess we could still go for many minutes discussing, even hours, all the issues around this problematic and how to tackle. Where do agencies and countries should put their effort, as Luke, you clearly pointed out. But we have to finish. So I thank you very much for your contribution. I think it was very interesting. I guess we're all learning every day on these new fields. So thank you very much, and we'll keep working together outside. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.